So kind of back to selling the candidate on the company
Yep.
early on in the process.
Yep.
And that, brings up another topic that I've thought about is the whole candidate experience. So tell me kind of the good and the bad that you've seen companies put in place around establishing a good candidate experience as well as their brand and how that can hurt and help a company's brand in the market.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see is where companies aren't organized. And I was a victim of that too, where one of the staffing partners I worked with called us out and we did separate Zoom interviews where we had multiple panelists asking the same base of questions. So be organized and understand which interviewer is covering which topics. The other thing is make sure you really are aligned across the board. And I mentioned this, but this is a critical one. If a candidate gets the sense that multiple individuals within the organization have different wants or initiatives or understanding of the role, that can go sideways very, very quickly. And also make sure that from an interview perspective that you're asking questions that are relevant to what it is that you're looking for. And that kind of goes back to that example that I mentioned if you're looking for a developer versus a client facing person.
Great. So back to a little bit more of the technical side of interviewing. When you see candidates or you talk to candidates or hiring managers, how do you think the, remote interview process versus in-person interview process should be leveraged?
Yeah, if your organization is fully remote, I fully support a remote interview, with the exception if it's a critical or a leadership role. In person can have a very different type of impression than just remotely. So, for those types of roles, I would say fly them in and go through the expense because it's still far less expensive than making that wrong hire when it's an impactful role. If you have an in office or hybrid type of environment, I would say never hire anyone on a remote basis because if they're not willing to carve out the time to come to your offices, that's going to be a challenge. And the other piece of it is you don't want them to show up for their first day, seeing the offices and meeting people face to face for the first time, because again, that can go sideways if it's not an environment they want to be within on a regular basis.
Thank you. So shifting gears again, in the past few years, diversity and inclusion has become a really prominent part of most talent processes. So what do you see as the current state of diversity within the hiring process? And then where do you see this going in the near future?
This is an interesting one. Diversity is always supported by the HR or people organizations or functions, but I rarely see it trickle down to be exercised by hiring managers. And particularly in startups, where oftentimes you may not have the luxury of time to continue looking for a diversity candidate, where you have aggressive deadlines and initiatives. So you're going to hire the right person. And so a lot of mistakes where startups make is hiring people that are cut from the same cloth. So I think involving HR and really having that push down is important. Um, and I think, for startups, being organized and really understanding and defining, if you're working with a third party, defining specifically what it is that you're looking for from a diversity standpoint. And again, I'm going to go back to the culture piece because diversity, you still want to make sure that the people align with your overall culture of the organization.
All right, Renata, let's switch gears again to compliance. And again, a lot of our leaders may not have a talent or HR background. So, what are some tips that you give to your leaders when they're interviewing candidates to make sure that they're asking questions that are compliant with applicable state or federal laws?
Sure. One piece that I believe is important is to make sure that you're not asking questions that aren't irrelevant or that are illegal. So I've had people in conversation, trying to just have a little bit of a personal engagement or personal touch, but inadvertently they end up asking about children or what church they go to or things that can be viewed as discriminatory. So it's totally innocent but illegal. The other piece is, managers can ask the same question in a multitude of ways, but you just want to make sure that you're organized in your approach and that it's not that this very verbatim same question from multiple sources.